Okay, unless you've been living under a rock, if you're a Doctor Who fan or you're a lapsed Doctor Who fan or you've just abandoned Doctor Who, unless you've been living under a rock, you've seen the news from the last 24, 36 hours. And that news is Russell T. Davies is officially the new showrunner when Chibnall leaves. Russell T. Davies, for those of you who are Doctor Who fans, but you're not like real deep fandom, geekery Doctor Who fans, and you're going, wait a minute, okay, the name kind of sounds familiar. Russell T. Davies is the man who brought Doctor Who back from the dead. Russell T. Davies is the man who relaunched the series in the new era, way back when, with the episode Rose, with Billie Piper as the companion and Christopher Eccleston as the Doctor. Way back when, longer ago than I actually want to say, because then I suddenly realize how much older I've gotten. Well, what does this mean? What are the ramifications of it? Well, obviously, it can be said that possibly, probably, the BBC is trying to send a message to Doctor Who fandom. Doctor Who is unfortunately right now a sinking ship, and they've brought Russell T. Davies back in. They're not going with a new, unknown quantity and untested showrunner. They're bringing back the person who gave us Christopher Eccleston's Doctor and David Tennant's Doctor, and for the most part, a lot of really good shows and a really good run of Doctor Who. And by doing this, they're kind of saying, hey, we're bringing your show back. If you've left us, if you've gone away, we're bringing your show back. And obviously right now that interpretation is possibly a viable one, but still questionable. We don't know who the new Doctor is going to be. But there's probably a lot of people, unfortunately, a lot of people in the toxic fanboy faction of fandom who are going to immediately go to that as the interpretation. And they're especially going to go to that interpretation if the next Doctor is announced and it's a white male playing the character. And there's probably a lot of people, because I'm already seeing this, who are going to claim that this is the ultimate sign that the BBC has thrown in the towel, and they've admitted that they've ruined Doctor Who because they made Doctor Who a woman, and that destroyed Doctor Who. And that, Jodie as a female Doctor that's a failure, and it's destroyed the show, and now they've got to bring in the guy that brought it back from the dead the first time to do it again. First, I'm going to address that, because like I said, I'm already starting to see it. And you know what? There may be a grain of truth in that, but I don't think that's the overriding reason. And I certainly don't think that Doctor Who was destroyed because of Jodie Whittaker and they made the Doctor a woman. And let me say this up front, like kind of full disclosure. For years now, and I'm on record in print, I can be found on several genre sites, because I was working for some at the time doing fan work for them, where I had said about a female Doctor, I wasn't 100% against it, but I definitely wasn't for it. If you wanted to make the Doctor a woman, okay, fine. Give fans a reason. Unless you want to risk alienating some fans or turning some fans off, you can't change an iconic character to that degree without giving them a really good reason. And it could be done, but you needed to provide a better storyline reason or a better conceptual reason than, well, it's time or because. And unfortunately, when we did get to this point, a lot of the people promoting it really did not give any reason beyond it's time and because. So you're already in a position where you're starting to risk alienating some of the fan base just because it seems like you're taking the thing that they like and you're screwing with it just for, social woke points, I guess. Give fandom a good reason. What are we going to do? We've got these ideas. We're still going to tell just regular good Doctor stories, but there are some interesting things that we want to explore from a slightly different perspective, or do some different things with the Doctor that we couldn't before, and we'd like to, X, Y, Z, and even if it's just like a thing, just give fans some reason. And some of the people that are kind of on the fence might be less likely to bow out. We never got that from Chibnall. We never got that from the BBC. We didn't get that from Jodie. We basically got it's time and because. Now, here's the other part of that. And this is also easy to find. Matter of fact, I can instantly find this because it's on my own blog, and I'll link it below. When they announced Jodie, and we finally got the first episode, I watched the first episode. I went in with an open mind, and that night I sat down and I typed up my thoughts. And I said, okay, it was a good episode. Wasn't great. It was a good episode. It wasn't not great because, of her. It was just not great because it's a regeneration episode. Regeneration episodes have never been the best episode of the season. But what was there was a lot of potential, was really good. And Jodie showed in that episode that she had the potential to be a great Doctor. And anybody that was tuning out just because, they made the Doctor a girl, well, you were doing a really dumb thing, because if they continued to ride the potential that they showed in that first episode and work on it and bring it to the front, this was going to be a really good Doctor, and you were going to be missing out on really good Doctor Who if you were tuning out just because of the gender of the Doctor. And I can't remember if I wrote this in there or not, but there was one thing that I've talked to people about, that one thing that I really liked about Jodie's Doctor in the beginning, the first episode, was that it was like she was a tinkerer. She built her own sonic screwdriver. She was deprived. She didn't have the TARDIS, and she didn't have anything else, and she didn't have a sonic screwdriver. So she goes into this garage, and with, just earthly tools, she makes this really cool sonic screwdriver. And we get this whole wonderful scene of her crafting this. And it kind of put me in the mind of some of the, John Pertwee, who was one of my favorites of the classic Doctors, because he liked to tinker and build things, and he would create new stuff all the time. And it was like, okay, this is going to be a Doctor who's going to be a tinkerer. She's going to have that kind of, that ingenuity of crafting and building things and doing this kind of thing in certain stories. And unfortunately, that never actually became part of her character. But no, I was actually kind of excited. There was a lot there that I was like, okay, this looks like the start of a good Doctor. And here we are a few years later, and obviously we didn't get a good Doctor. And yeah, the series itself does feel like a sinking ship. I would not lay any of that on the decision to make the Doctor a female. There were actually a lot of people tuning in and looking early on. There was interest. This show could have been doing wonderful numbers right now and could have had a much more solid fan base still with it right now if the writing was good, if the show running was good. if you delivered a good Doctor Who series, the gender of the Doctor ultimately shouldn't have made a difference. Unfortunately, Chibnall didn't do that. Jodie's not totally blameless. I think she kind of said some things early on that was unnecessarily probably alienated a few segments of fandom, and not just the toxic fanboys. She said a few things on and off that kind of made me cringe. And I was like, that was a really stupid thing to say, but separate the art from the artist and the character from the actor and give it a try and watch the series. But the thing that I couldn't separate was the bad writing from the series and the bad show running. And almost all of that falls on the head of Chibnall. And the reason I say almost all and not all of it was because at some point, he has to answer to bosses in the BBC, and they should have been on top of him when this was happening a lot more than they were. But for the most part, Chibnall's the showrunner. It's his baby. And I blame him because under his stewardship, Jodie has become this generation's Colin Baker. And for those of you who are not classic Who fans, Colin Baker, when you see pictures of the old Doctors, Colin Baker is the one who looks like a rainbow who had overdosed on acid, threw up on him. He's the one with like the suit that is 50 different gaudy, bright colors all together. Has the short, curly, blondish red hair. And Colin Baker, from the first episode, they wanted to bring some of the anger of the first Doctor back. And they wanted to bring some of this cantankerous character back. But they didn't handle it well. And they didn't do it consistently and properly. So he just came off as irritating. And a lot of the stories he was given were very poorly written. They were very, very subpar stories. And a lot of the attention, the BBC was doing very weird things with Doctor Who at that time, as far as both promoting it but neglecting it at the same time. And there were times where, and this comes from Colin Baker as well as from other people that worked on the show, there were times where there was no consistency and no direction under when he was the Doctor. There was a story he tells about one of the stories during the trial of the Time Lord, and I'd heard other people connected to this say more or less the same thing, which was one of the stories. These connected stories were part of the trial of the Time Lord. He's being put on trial on Gallifrey, and these adventures are being shown in the courtroom on Gallifrey through the power of the Matrix. And at some point we discover the Master is also involved with this, but we see him on the screen that we're seeing the stuff from the Matrix from. So that now casts some of that into doubt. There's one segment in one of the stories where the Doctor is just ripping into Peri, his companion, and just tearing into her. And Colin Baker, they were getting scripts that were constantly being rewritten, and they weren't getting complete scripts, and they knew this was part of a long arc, so he didn't know full context of where everything was going just in that story, let alone long arc. And he needed to know, so he didn't do something that was going to come across wrong with the later parts of the story. He kind of needed to know, well, how am I playing this? And he went up to the director and whoever else was like one of the people in charge that was on set that day. And he said, okay, look, here, I need to know this. I'm really ripping into this. Is some like vicious dialogue. Now, is this like a fabrication from the Matrix that the Master's creating? So am I playing this like really vicious over the top? Is this, I know I'm being watched, so I'm saying these things and doing these things, but I'm going to be a little more reserved, or maybe I'm going to kind of give Perry some subtle hint or something that'll give Perry and the viewers a subtle hint that, okay, maybe I don't actually mean this, but there's something else going on. Or is there something kind of messing with my mind? So, I'm going to be like this, but I'm not going to do it as like over the top, like the Master's fabricating. How am I doing this? And the answer that he would get back was, oh, just do it however you want. Whatever you feel is good for the scene right now. Which, well, he's got no idea of what everything else is going to be. So how does he know? And nobody would tell him. And what resulted in that is you had a number of those stories that felt really disjointed and incoherent, and one part of it didn't work with the other in tone or style. And the result of all of that is, amongst the fans of classic Doctor Who, Colin Baker for years was considered a horrible doctor. And it really wasn't until later years, and then especially when Big Finish came along and they brought him back for the Big Finish stuff and they gave him good stories and let him like really have something to work with, that fans started warming up to him and be like, no, he was a really good doctor. If he had only been given good stories back then, he could have been a great doctor. Well, unfortunately, Jodie is this generation's Colin Baker. She had all the potential in the world to be a really good doctor. But the reality is she's been given a lot of bad stories, and she has a miserably bad showrunner. And the miserably bad showrunner has problems where, and apparently other shows that he's done, this is a common thing, he might launch strong, but things start falling apart as he goes along. Chibnall, and I don't know anything really in any detail about him as a person, so I can't actually say, well, this is what he's like as a human being. I can say this is what he comes across as. Having seen him in various few interviews here and there, since he's taken over as showrunner of The Doctor, and particularly with the big revelations that came out of the last full season that we've gotten. Honestly, Chibnall strikes me as someone who he was more interested in being able to do things and then get the accolades for doing them. He did firsts, and he let you know that he did this first and this first and this first, and now give him his adoration and his accolades. He was far more interested in that than actually coming up with good stories. He very much undercut the first that he brought to the show. We got the first female doctor in Jodie. We got the first female doctor of color, Joe Martin's doctor. We got the first master played by a person of color, right? He creates an origin story for the Doctor, and we see the Doctor in the Doctor's earliest form, the timeless child that the Time Lords stole the secrets of regeneration from and grafted it onto themselves, and eventually, the Gallifreyans, and became the Time Lords, and all of the Time Lord society sprang from the Doctor. And the first version of the Doctor we ever saw, the Doctor was a young black girl. And there's Chibnall, yes, I've done all of these wonderful, progressive, woke firsts. Give me my accolades, pat me on the back. Okay, I could care less one way or the other if he wants to do these firsts. If he gives us good stories that actually do something other than just allow him to go, I did this first. And that's not what he did. We got lackluster stories with Jodie. We got a really good doctor out of Joe Martin, but if anything else, that underscored how poorly they were doing things with Jodie. When they did the special features on bringing Joe Martin's character in and revealing this is the doctor is kind of the setup for the Timeless Child resolution story. But at that point, just this weird, what's going on? This is a doctor we've never met, but it's pre-Jodie. They talked about how much they thought about the doctor and how much thought they put into the whole presentation. And when she came onto the screen as the doctor, she opens up the little thing and her personality comes back in and she's the doctor once again. When she and Jodie were on the screen, especially when she's facing off against the big bad of the story, the Joe Martin's doctor's big bad of the story, she felt like the doctor, but it didn't feel like a two-doctor story. We didn't have two doctors in that episode. We had the doctor and a companion. And unfortunately, the companion was Jodie. The main doctor, the primary doctor of the series, felt more like a companion than a doctor when somebody comes along and is given like a really good doctor role to play. And that should have been a red flag to them, but they never realized it, I guess. And it also underscored a possible problem that I was worried about once before. And that was that if they decided to make a female doctor, how would they write her? Because there's a problem in television writing, and it's a long time problem. And honestly, I think it's almost an unconscious bias with a lot of writers, especially male writers, where if you took the character traits of a character like the Doctor and you have that on a man, you would just write that character that way constantly. Even if, the Doctor may have a little more style than quite saying it like this, but the Doctor was very much the smartest person in the room, knew he was the smartest person in the room, would come in and let everybody know that at one point or another, and at some point or another is basically going to let you know, you're going to do this or you're going to die. You're going to do what I tell you to do. This is how we're going to get out of this. And if you don't, you're an idiot and you're going to die. So shut up, stop thinking, and do what I'm telling you to do. Obviously with more style, but that's kind of the Doctor. The Doctor is this very strong, forceful personality. And more as the show went on with Jodie, the Doctor was less and less a strong, forceful personality. Maybe the Doctor was the smartest person in the room most of the time, but the force of the personality was diminishing, and there were even stories where she felt like less of the driving force in the solution for the story than some of her companions, than some of the other characters that came in. And it was almost like that this worry that I had was that when you take a character like that, but it's a female, when you see that in television, usually that's, the Ice Queen. It's the foil for one of your main characters. And not foil as in villain, although it can be a villain. But sometimes it's like Callista Flockhart is Cat Grant in the first season of Supergirl. And if you've never seen that, I'm sorry, I'll try my best here. But she was absolutely that kind of assertive character. She walked in, she let you know she was in charge. She was the smartest person in the room. You needed to be quiet. You needed to do what she said. And she did it with a Callista Flockhart did it with this perfect style. And a lot of people liked the character, but she was a part-time character. And a lot of times, while she occasionally would work, the character would work as maybe a helper or a confidant for a personal thing to kind of motivate Kara. A lot of times she was more often used kind of comedically as a foil to kind of zing Kara in her civilian persona. when characters like that really get popular, and on some shows they get brought in, and we're going to make this character more part of the regular cast and constant, and not just like a part-time character. A lot of times, if it's a female, they greatly soften the character, and she just becomes one of the gang eventually. And not all the time, there are exceptions, but it's almost like this unconscious thing that a lot of TV writers have a problem with. They can't write a character that's a female like that consistently. It's almost like they think if they do, she's going to be the ice queen, or she's going to be the B word, or, people aren't going to like her because women shouldn't be like that. And I was kind of worried that, they were going to do that with a female Doctor Who. And I don't honestly know that is what they did, but at times it felt like it. And it really felt like it when Jo Martin's Doctor came in, because she came in full bore Doctor, and you suddenly realized how much Jodie had diminished as the Doctor, that she felt like a companion and not one of two Doctors in a story. And they never, that was never fixed. That was never addressed in the writing. She never really started becoming a stronger Doctor again, even with everybody saying, oh, we love Jo's Doctor. She was really Doctor, and oh man, I'd love to see a series with her, because man, that was like Doctor right there, right? And it never seemed to affect the writing, and nobody realized, we're not really writing Jodie properly. We need to give her Doctor moments. And they continued to give her weaker moments. And the same was true with the Master. And honestly, it wasn't just moments like that. It wasn't just characters or things like that were like social significance type things. That Chibnall seemed to, I have an idea and I want to do this first. And then just kind of flubbed it. In the payoff to the Timeless Child, or at least what we've got so far as a payoff to that storyline, he introduces a villain that could be like this really amazing, brand new era threat in the Doctor Who universe. The Master more or less conquers a broken Gallifrey by bringing the Cybermen to Gallifrey and letting them take the Time Lords and creating these Cyber Time Lords. So you've got Cybermen that have all of the power, all of the abilities of the Time Lords. You have this new race that could be infinitely terrifying. And once Chibnall put them on screen, it was like, okay, isn't this cool? Look at this. Isn't this cool? I had a cool idea. Okay, I don't really have any ideas what to do with them. So the Master's going to get into a snit, and on a whim, he'll just eliminate them all like that. And that's what he did. And when you look at the whole story, this potentially really cool, awesome thing, you could remove the Cyber Time Lords from the series, from that story entirely. And the Master could have walked in with just regular Cybermen, and it wouldn't have changed the story at all. It would have made no difference. This really cool concept is all he had. He had no ideas. And just, okay, look, this is cool. Isn't this cool? Didn't I come up with something cool? Okay, whatever. I'm going to get rid of that now because I need to do this more Timeless Child stuff. And unfortunately, it felt like that's what he did with the firsts that he was so happy to take credit for. He didn't have any good ideas or good stories to use Jodie's Doctor in. He didn't apparently. I mean, he's got one more season. He might bring Jo Martin's Doctor back, but Okay, we got Joe Martin's doctor. And if she never comes back, what was the point? Other than Chibnall being able to go, I did it first. He didn't really tell any good master stories. And he had an actor who is a fantastic actor. If you've seen him in anything else, who could have been an amazing master. And we just kind of got crazy master and lunatic master and master that kind of felt like a step down after Missy. Although, granted, this is time travel, so this may be a master in the master's timeline from before Missy, but that's a whole other story, discussion. But yeah, he didn't do anything with a lot of the stuff that he brought in. And it didn't seem like he had any concept of how to do something good with any of the things that he wanted to put onto the screen. And it hurt the Doctor in the show overall. And yeah, Doctor Who right now feels like a sinking ship. Now, again, I'm not going to put 99.9% of that on Jodie or the idea that we had a female Doctor, because those moments that she was given good material, rare as it was in her time as the Doctor now, Jodie showed that she could be a really good Doctor in the same way that, honestly, and I've said this before, Stephen Moffat was really falling apart as a showrunner by the time he was coming to the end of his run. And his run unfortunately ended with Peter Capaldi, who is probably my favorite of the new era Doctors as a Doctor, but who had a bunch of stories that were so bad that as much as I loved Peter, I was about to quit. The only thing that stopped me from giving up on the show and no longer watching was they had announced that Moffat was leaving. And I was like, okay, I'll watch through to the end of Moffat's run, and hopefully, Peter gets a better run with a new showrunner. Then, unfortunately, they he was leaving. So, but I only stuck around because they announced that Moffat was leaving. And that last season, other than the final story, it was one of the interesting things. Moffat could tell really good standalone stories and Christmas specials, but he completely fell apart as a showrunner for like full seasons by the end of it all. But I was ready to quit. And unfortunately, Chibnall took over what was already kind of a suffering series and just nosedived it. So that kind of takes us back to, well, what does this mean? What are the ramifications? Well, we're already seeing some of the toxic fanboys and the toxic sections in fandom jumping up and down and crowing that this is vindication, because obviously, the BBC knows they've screwed it up so bad that they've got to bring back the man who brought Doctor Who back from the dead to bring it back from the dead a second time, because the female Doctor Who experiment killed the show. And it's just in the tank, and this is going to be the only way to save it. And, oh, God. And honestly, and I hate to say this, because I don't agree with their reasonings for it, because their reasonings are almost purely to blame female Doctor for the failings, rather than just pretty much the reason Chibnall is an abominably bad showrunner, and he let the writing just fail the series miserably. To some degree, the notion that's already being floated by the toxic fanboys, I think the reasoning is wrong, but overall the statement is correct. I'm looking at, like, they're bringing Russell T Davies back. Okay. Well, it's, on the one hand, it's never been done in Doctor Who. We've never seen them bring a showrunner back. There's never really been the ability to do so. They had a series of showrunners early in the show, and then oh great, his name just went right out of my head. You had the showrunner who basically jumped onto Doctor Who and wrote it for the entire time until the last episode of Sylvester McCoy's time. And God, I think he jumped in on Tom Baker. I can't remember if it was John Pertwee or Tom Baker, but I know he came in when Baker was John Nathan Turner. When John Nathan Turner came in, I know that Tom Baker was in there. I can't remember if he came in before Baker or not. But you had like that really long run with him. And then in the modern era, okay, is it unusual to bring a showrunner back? We've never done it in Doctor Who. Does it mean anything necessarily? Because we are talking about British television, and there's been a lot of times where, and not even just British television, there are writers out there who have, 5 or 6 books in a series, and it's absolutely on fire, and they'll step away and go, I need to write some other stuff. I'm kind of burning out. I've got some ideas, but I'm just burning. I need to write some other stuff. I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I'm going to do this stuff over here. Then I'm going to come back when I feel a little less burnt out on it. And we kind of, in British television, we've kind of seen similar things. I mean, there are favorite shows of mine from decades worth of British television where they didn't do season after season after season, year after year. It was like they would write a nice run and they would take a break. And then when the creative people behind it were like, we've got some more ideas, we've written the stories, we're going to come back, we're going to do some more stuff. And even in the modern era, Red Dwarf. Red Dwarf comes in, does a few episodes, they have their run, then they go away for a few years. And they work on their stuff, they come back when they've got the ideas, and then they go away for a few years. You could make the argument that, Russell T Davies, he stepped away when he felt like he needed to step away. And maybe now, some time has passed, he's not as burnt out, he's had a break from show running something as big as Doctor Who, and he's like, well, I'd love to do this again, guys, can I come back? That's always a possibility. That could easily be as much the reason why he's coming back. But honestly, no matter what you do or don't want to say was the cause, oh man, I kind of get the feeling that the BBC is doing this specifically to send a message to everybody that's not watching anymore. Like, hey, okay, look, this is the man who brought Doctor Who back and gave us the early Doctor Who that you love. And, we've kind of listened to you. We've heard you. And, we're bringing him back. And he's going to bring back the glory days of Doctor Who. And it's going to be the Doctor Who you know. And the toxic fanboys out there are definitely going to go crazy wild with pushing this notion for all the wrong reasons if, when they announce the new Doctor, the Doctor is played by a white male. But no matter if I think that some of the things that they're saying is wrong, yeah, honestly, I think this is kind of the BBC sending a message to fans who have left the show. Hey, look, we're bringing the old show back again. Please come back. Unfortunately, I think that whether that's the case or not, I think that's going to be just used to bury Jodie's doctor in the eyes of a lot of people. And I honestly, I really do think that in and of itself is a shame, because I would love if Jodie had a chance to have a good run under Russell T Davies, even if it's one season. I wish she would stick around. Unfortunately, from what I hear, she's been very adamant about the fact that she and Chibnall had both agreed when they left, they were going to leave together. So Chibnall goes, she's going to bow out. And I wish that wasn't the case. Because I would love to see if she could get a season with Russell T Davies, if she could go out on a high note. If Russell T Davies coming in and being the showrunner would give her that season to kind of redeem her in the eyes of some fans. Unfortunately, if bringing Russell T Davies in is the BBC kind of saying, oh, please come back, we're going to bring you back your old show, I don't even think the BBC is going to work hard at keeping her on board. But yeah, I actually hope that under Russell T Davies, because the anniversary is coming up, if there's a good show where some of the older doctors from the modern era are going to come back for an anniversary special, I really hope that she comes back in and plays the doctor and has a really strong story for her doctor to kind of redeem it a bit, because you know what, like I started out saying, I was never super in favor of it, but I was willing to take it with an open mind. And I thought she had a lot of potential to be a good doctor. And I think she could have been a great doctor if she had had a better showrunner and better writing. And I would really love to see her get a great TV moment before she finally goes away from the character and never comes back in at least TV form. I mean, who knows? She might get some really cool Big Finish stories later, but that's a whole other discussion. But I would love it if she were to be given like a really strong, really good TV swan song. And I don't think she's going to get that under Chibnall. So that's kind of a shame. And unfortunately, like I said, the toxic fanboys are going to just use this to tear her apart even more and tear apart Chibnall, which I don't have any problem with tearing apart Chibnall. But they're also going to try to trumpet this as, don't mess with the doctor. He's a white male and that's all he ever will be, and, taught you a lesson. And the trolling on a lot of Doctor Who boards is probably going to get a lot worse when Davis takes over again. And like I said, especially if the next Doctor is back to being a white male, the trolling is going to get obnoxious. But yeah, unfortunately, I think it's going to become a not so subtle secret that the BBC is doing this, because they're going to be saying, hey, we're giving you back the old Doctor Who show, the good Doctor Who show, please come back to us. And what other ramifications are there from this? And I should probably wrap it up, because I just looked at the timer on this. And we're going into 44 minutes. What else is going to come out of this? Well, Russell T Davies He gave us some really great Doctor Who. He also gave us some really bizarre Doctor Who moments. And let's be completely honest, I never liked his personal choice of the Master. And the actor who played the Master finally got to play a good version of the Master when he came back and played opposite Missy in Capaldi's well, not a swan song story, because that would have been the Christmas special, but the last two-parter of the regular series. And apparently in interviews he has said before, he kind of, the Master that we saw in that two-parter, where he used a little more guile and manipulation, and, you know, there was the old school throwback to he was in a disguise at the beginning and you didn't know it was him, and, you know, the whole nine yards. He wanted to play a Master that was more in line with the Delgado Master. And it was more Russell T Davies that was like, no, get crazier, get more insane, get really bizarre. And he didn't want to do that, but that's what he kept being pushed by Davies to do. You know, be over the top, be, you know, Jack Nicholson in Batman, Joker crazy, right? And it was Russell T Davies that gave us the most bizarre freaking version of the Master we ever saw, with the weird energy leech and shooting laser electrical plasma, whatever that was, out of his hands, and using that to fly and doing all of these other crazy things, and some of the weirder excesses. And it's one of the reasons why people were starting to kind of slag on Russell T Davies, even though now they look back on most of his run much more fondly. We're going to get better Doctor Who, probably. Hopefully we get more of the old, good Russell T Davies. We don't get more of the strange excess Russell T Davies. But considering we've just gone through Chibnall, it's got to be an improvement. So hopefully we're going to get some good Doctor Who. And maybe we get like a nice relaunch, you know, kind of a soft reboot style relaunch of Doctor Who, in the same way we got it when Christopher Eccleston first walked onto the screen. I mean, you know, obviously we're going to see a regeneration, so it's not quite going to be like that, but yeah, hopefully I'll say this about it, and I'm going to repeat myself, but it's the only thing I'm hoping for. As a Doctor Who fan, I'm just hoping we get really good Doctor Who again. I don't care what the gender is. I don't care what the color is at this point. Anybody that wants to argue about that, yeah, have fun. Argue whichever side of the equation you want. The only thing I want is good Doctor Who again. I want good Doctor stories. I want stories that showcase the best aspects of the Doctor. I want stories where whoever the Doctor is portrayed by has the ability to go in and play the Doctor for all they're worth and have great Doctor moments. And I want compelling stories and good science fiction and the type of Doctor Who stories that when I talk to other fans the week following that story, we're all excited because it was good Doctor Who. It wasn't, well, yeah, there was this good moment, but no, I mean, on the whole, it was, but the next episode looks good from the preview, kind of. You know, I'm tired of hearing those conversations. I want good Doctor Who again. And I want to be excited about it. And I want to be with fans who are excited about it. And I'm hoping, no matter the reason they've actually gone back to Russell T Davies, I'm hoping that that's what we get. And what's your opinion? If you stuck with me through this whole thing, what's your opinion? Let me know. Write it in the comments below, or whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on the blog, or if somehow you originally found this on Facebook or Twitter, let me know in the comments below. What do you think of Russell T Davies coming back? What do you think that means? What do you think the ramifications are? What do you think it means for the future of the show? Are you excited? Are you not? What are your feelings on it? Later.